And then we come on to red S. So, excuse me, I've got a tickle. So what is red S? So it is the relative energy deficiency in sport. In a nutshell, there is not enough energy intake to meet the demands of physical activity and exercise and energy output. And hormones are directly affected as a result. One of the key things that can happen is the onset of irregular or even non-existent cycles. So it plays havoc with your ovulation and or stops that happening. One of the problems with that, and there are a few, is that it can also point to serious health issues in the medium and long term, which can also be associated with lifestyle, stress, endocrine, gynecological, autoimmune, nutritional, and genetic disorders. So estrogen and progesterone, as we mentioned, are produced as a result of your ovulatory process within a normal menstrual cycle, and they support your brain health, bone density and health, heart health, cognitive function, sleep regulation, breast and uterine health as well. So those factors are directly impacted by a healthy, unhealthy, or absent menstrual cycle. Red S can affect men, and typically in the pictures on your slide, there is a sort of prevalence in a certain sporting physique, I guess. So you've got your ballet dancers, your gymnasts, your endurance runners, your jockeys, basically anyone who has to maintain a relatively low body weight, or also someone who is doing a lot of training, which we'll come on to. Generally speaking, there's 20% higher prevalence of disordered eating in athletes versus non-athletes. And that was from a paper in 2018. The prevalence of musculoskeletal disorders, so muscle, joint, skeleton problems in women who self-reported menstrual irregularity was about 81.1% for oligomenorrhea and 69% for amenorrhea. So those are quite high, really. Amenorrhea is when periods stop completely because there's not enough energy for the body to actually bother with ovulating. Oligomenorrhea is when periods are so irregular that you might have about 6 to 8 over the course of a year as well. So as I mentioned, so common sports that red S can be found in, so gymnasts, dancers, runners, and jockeys with low body mass and more of an ectomorph body shape. Signs and symptoms, so these are really quite important to be aware of with restrictive or disordered eating, so maybe verging on your anorexia, your bulimia, a focus on or preoccupation with food. Overtraining is massive, weight loss, and then low energy availability as well. Sometimes there can be some personality type contributing factors as well. So often there's a high drive, perfectionism, type 1 driven individual, obsessive tendencies as well. So real high achieving individuals. And also environmental factors as well. Aesthetics, social media is awful for this kind of thing. Appearance, perceptions from public, family, social media, even coaches. So there can be a little bit of overlap with coaches sometimes fueling the onset or development of sort of red S behaviours. Typically when perhaps athletic performance starts to improve, speeds, times, durations of distance improve, or your speeds of your races improve. Weight might change as well, but there is a bit of a sweet spot before things start to decline, and that energy balance is tipped as well. So the red S, it really compromises long-term health, which is the main thing, and also athletic sport performance, and that cannot be stressed enough. It's not normal to not have a period and not ovulate, particularly because your body just won't have enough energy to maintain reproductive health. Sometimes the issue can excuse me, just be that there isn't sufficient energy intake, as opposed to it being disordered eating. There is a bit of a grey area and a fine line. One thing that might be quite useful to try and establish what your baseline levels for energy intake is through finding out what your basal metabolic rate is. So basically your energy baseline, what energy your body needs for day-to-day functions in your sort of your brain, your vital organs, and living, before energy expenditure is taken into account. And that's something that you can look at online, I think, and put various things into tables that come up with your sort of calorific, if you like, intake of energy. So that's quite useful to then gauge whether or not you're actually not providing your body with enough energy to really kind of maximize your training efforts as well, because that's what it's all about, performance, but safely. Symptoms which can also appear if people are on contraception, and obviously if you are on contraception, it's very difficult to know if you're not ovulating, because you're not ovulating as the contraception suppresses your ovulation. So if you've lost your periods, then that already flags up problems. If you're on contraception and you get any of the following issues, then it might be worth having a look at what your energy balance is with food in and energy output. So loss of periods, niggling injuries that just don't quite settle, lots of regular colds and infections, perhaps some development of some stress fractures or repeated stress fractures, feeling tired and fatigued, tendinopathies, low iron levels, anemia, fatigue. It can slow your digestion as well, so you might experience some bloating or IBS symptoms, and possibly also some poor sleep. So basically your body is breaking down, primarily because there's too much energy output, not enough energy input. You know, if you're driving your car up to Scotland, you wouldn't expect it to get there on fumes. So when you're training, you really shouldn't expect your body to perform at its peak when you're not fueling it adequately. So really, as I say, you could look at support when athletes are unable to identify these behaviours or changes in symptoms. So that really needs to come from the support team, coaches, and for maybe the wider club, group, family members to have a bit of an understanding of symptoms, so that there's some implementation of management to help the athlete get back on track with good nutrition and hydration and good behaviours really behind fueling fitness. There's quite a common misconception that you know, you need to train more, run more, and do more and eat less to perform well. But actually, the way that management of Red S is approached is actually by eating more and doing less, which can feel quite backward, particularly if you're in quite a pattern of regular training. But we're often conditioned to believe that you know, doing more miles and eating less is the way forward, and it really isn't. The other thing to look at, just as an aside, for young girls, so teenagers, late teens, early 20s, if there are sort of perhaps signs of some of these Red S symptoms, is with regard to bone health. So about 95% of a young woman's peak bone mass is present by the age of 20. And that is generally achieved through sort of loaded exercise, calcium intake. I'm sure Emma will be able to talk a little bit more about some nutritional elements there. And And there's also some overall gains in mass, bone mass, continuing up to 30. But typically by your early 20s is when our bodies are at peak bone mass. If that's not achieved by that age, through low energy intake, low calcium, vitamin D, protein intake, low body weight or sustained low body weight, disordered eating, low bone loading, or strength exercises, it can have implications to bone health as we age. So not only at your perimenopausal age, but also postmenopausal. Again, when you're looking at fragility fractures, osteopenia, and osteoporosis as well. So there's quite a few things to think about with RED-S. I mean, you could look at for the young females, there's wider societal reasons why physical activity is changing, with sedentary behaviour, social media, reduction in activity in schools, obesity, lack of provision or access to sport and exercise, and even cultural and religious factors as well. So it's not quite as straightforward a thing to manage, but for the RED-S, certainly having the kind of warning signs there with changes in behavior habits, training levels, weight changes, and energy intake are the main things to consider, and then try and rectify and improve for hormone health, and then also general health overall as well.